that still makes me laugh. Welcome back to Broadscast. We're in studio with Robin Sachs. Woo-hoo! So,
With
Robin,
my Bitmojis.
Yeah. Now you've just opened up the floodgates with me and the Bitmojis.
I'm going to show you them. I'm like looking at them.
Yeah, be wary. So, Robin is a former. I'm just quoting this right from your bio, so I don't ruin it.
By the way, this is a new website. This is like the fact that you have this
beautiful.
printed out. It's just been redone. So launching
It's beautiful.
robinsachs.com. A little shout out to myself.
Yeah,
Wow,
I love it.
good.
That's on our website
Awesome.
too, and people can follow you at Twitter. That's also on our website. You are a former LA County Deputy District Attorney. You focused, I think, on child sexual assault division, correct?
Yes, for the bulk of my career. I mean, I was in Riverside County, LA County, did the whole gamut. Murders, robberies, burglaries, thefts, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But for the most part, sexual assault, child sexual assault, domestic violence.
Right. Okay. Stalking. And then, and you've been on networks like ABC and NBC and CNN and CBS and morning shows and radio as a legal analyst. And what I loved,
it's probably easier to list where she hasn't been because there's like two places.
But what I loved in some of the stuff that I read about you is why you became an attorney.
Oh, God, it's so embarrassing.
Why? It's the best thing because you have a big mouth. I love that. That was the reason.
I did. Because my mom told me. Yes, I wanted to be a teacher actually. And my mom, and then I was like 13 years old, and I'm like, I want to be a teacher. I used to have like my stuffed animals and a chalkboard in my room, and my friend Nicole, I used to do homework and all that kind of stuff. And my mom, and I'd fight with my mom all the time. My mom's like, you know what? You can get paid for that big mouth of yours. And I'm like, really?
I love
it's funny. I wanted to be an attorney in 9th grade, and my brother's like, oh, please, someone would argue one case against you, and you'd cry. And so I cried, and I gave it up.
Isn't it amazing how those little impressions from when you're young?
Yeah, thanks, Tim.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so thank you for being here today. So, Jackie, do you have a question? Someone came in, or do we just go right in?
Let's start in, but we did have some. I mean, if you have a question, 661-298-5487. I do have a few.
How are you supposed to remember that number? Say it slower.
661-298-5487.
I mean, like I'm on the freeway pulling over, hitting a wall as you're trying to say that.
All right, thank you. I do appreciate that because I probably say it like every time. So we do have some questions, but let's first go into people are making a lot of mistakes when it comes to legal. Like what are we doing wrong? How is it that we look at the law and how do we have it all wrong?
Well, I think there's a philosophical problem out there. I mean, there's this feeling of, and it happened just today, actually. I got a phone call from friend of mine in Vegas who called me, and he feels wronged. And so his first response is, I already called, it has to do with a car being in the auto shop too long or whatever. And he goes, I already sent him a letter that the car dealership, a letter that they're going to have to deal with my lawyer. I'm like, whoa. Let's see first, one of the biggest mistakes people make is that they automatically threaten legal action. And I am personally not a fan of making a threat and not coming through with it. So if you're going to threaten legal action, you better have a complaint ready and you better plan on filing it because otherwise you're going to not be taken seriously. So I think we're too quick to jump to the answer to disputes as to being in the legal system. The legal system is costly, slow, and unfair. And I think that if there are other ways to resolve things. Sometimes cases need to go through the legal system, but it's not exactly the way people think. And I think that kind of parlays into some of the other issues, which is there's this belief of how cases should be. People like go to Mommy and Me or go to the park and think that's how every divorce case is going to be. Or they watch a little bit of, Nancy Grace and think that's what's going to be in a criminal court. Or you go, and you have a will or a trust case and you think, oh, this is what's going to happen. People don't know. You have to know the culture of what's really going on.
Well, I love that people watch these Law and Order and, which I love those shows, but it doesn't happen like that. The crime happens, the investigation happens, the indictments happen, the trial happens, and within 45 minutes.
Right, I love that system.
I know. We wish.
And by the way, that's what jurors think, though. By the way, and that's what jurors think. And jurors think that you're going to have this great story, and and then someone's going to come in the back of the courtroom and say, "I did it," and you have that moment. Right? It doesn't happen. That's never happened.
Do you think that makes it difficult for attorneys when they're actually in court trying to litigate? When you have, the NCISs and all these shows that try to purport what the legal system and what investigators are actually going through, does that make it difficult for you to do your job?
Listen, I'll tell you, from both as a prosecutor and as a defense attorney now, if you go to any seminar for practicing criminal law, there will undoubtedly be a section or a class or a speaker speaking about what's called the CSI Effect, which is not only the expectations of what science and the role of science, but it also talks about the fact that juries you have to deal with the television aspect of the justice system because our jurors have that expectation based on it. So you can't ignore, even though I'm saying that's crazy and it's ridiculous, you have to immediately demystify that when you're picking a jury. But does it have an effect on a regular, everyday basis? No, because 99% of the stuff that happens in court does not happen in front of a jury.
Right.
It's very few cases actually go to a jury trial. So yes, you have to deal with the television there, but no, you don't go to court and have the judge and the two attorneys and the parties think that it's going to, well, the parties do, but not necessarily the legal professionals think it happens that way.
Huh. Okay. All right. Well, then that just debunked my whole myth. So
no, it doesn't. But it does. And it's at its most important in a jury trial. But the reality is even in the criminal justice system, at least, and I can speak for Los Angeles County, I would say only about 10 to 12% of the cases go to trial.
Yeah.
So you're talking about people dealing with what should happen. Now, I'll tell you along those lines, what people expect to be the outcome on a case is the expectations out there are crazy. For example, from a criminal defense point of view, people think, well, if I'm going to hire a criminal defense attorney, then that means that they should get me off.
Right.
And it's like, well, it depends about what the facts are. I mean, yes, you can look for all the ways to get off. It doesn't necessarily mean just because you have a lawyer, you're going to get off. People don't understand that, I wasn't there when you were drinking and then getting in the car and driving. All I can do is try to mitigate and make sure that the system did what it was supposed to do when they were arresting you, and making sure that the system was doing what it's supposed to do when they're prosecuting you, and making sure the cops did what they were supposed to do. But if you had 10 drinks and you're a .20 and everyone did their job correctly, to think that I'm going to be the miracle worker to get you off is an insane perspective.
Try not drinking that much before you get behind the wheel.
Well, or making sure and holding the system accountable. I mean, if they didn't administer the test properly, or if you, I frankly, like, if you didn't do it and there's a claim of innocence, then I understand. But if you're calling me and saying, yeah, I did do this, now get me off, it's like, okay, where are you going to take responsibility here?
Right. I have a warped view right now of the legal system because I faithfully watch How to Get Away with Murder. And I'm just assuming you're all just burying bodies and hiding murders from each other.
Well, I mean, I think there's
whether it's literal or figurative, but
Well, and the system's not necessarily fair. I mean, you have to understand, like, the culture. For example, in family court right now, for years and years and years and years, there was a presumption that if you got divorced, the woman would get custody. The men would have very small amount of visitations, and dads would have to pay big bucks to the spouse or to the wife. Now, because of all those years of the default to the woman, the fathers' rights movement, who have been very active, very prolific, and very loud, have successfully gotten courts to now swing the other way. And now if you go into courts, there is, first of all, not only is there a presumption of 50-50 custody, but there is going to be more of a chance that the woman is going to get ruled against her than the man will. Yes.
Why? Because they're just trying to prove a point?
Because there's more of a forgiveness for men, and there's a belief that men should not be penalized.
Right.
And I think, frankly, actually, from a philosophical point of view, I agree with that. I think that's a good thing. I think that kids need both their mom and their dad in their life, but it shouldn't be a mom versus dad and who the gender is analysis. It's who the person is, who the people are, who's acting in the best interest of the children. The other thing that's happening in courts is that while a lot of people, especially women who have been bullied potentially by men in their past, feel like, I'm going to now stand up for myself, I'm not taking it one more minute, I'm going to fight. Well, that philosophy can blow up in the family court because the family court's likes the party that's most
amenable,
easy to get along, get along to go along kind of thing. And the courts like those people because they don't want the squeaky wheels. And so the squeaky wheels are not getting as much of a benefit as the other parents. So there's this belief that I need to be a fighter and I need to come in blazing. And it's like, no, actually the person who's most reasonable, most calm, most willing to work through a situation, most compromising is probably going to do much better.
On that note, we do have a question from one of our listeners who did not want to be identified, but she is recently separated, and she wants to know, she hasn't filed for divorce yet. What does she need to know before moving down that path?
Well, so separation is kind of an interesting thing. So someone called me and said, hey, listen, I'm thinking about getting separated. This date of separation in California is a big deal. So a lot of people think that the date that you've actually decided is when you all of a sudden are now no longer considered a marriage and you're no longer considered a community. So if those people out there right now, if you're sitting here thinking that you want to get separated, there are ramifications for that. One is about support, child support and spousal support. Spousal support is presumed to begin on the date of separation. And if you don't immediately get some sort of either orders or arrangement in place, then you are losing what could be the status quo, because what the courts look at in terms of setting the amount of support out there is they're looking to see how much money do you need to live. Spousal support and child support is not supposed to be a windfall. It's not supposed to be this is the money you get as a consolation prize.
Right.
It's supposed to be this is the money you need to live in order to maintain your standard of living. So if you are separating right away, you need to immediately make sure you are getting what would be the approximate amount that you would be getting in support. And you don't need a lawyer necessarily to do that. You can run it. It's done through a computer program. But you want to take something, because every minute you do, the distance master is your friend. If you don't take money, then it's very hard later on saying, I need money. And then the judge is going to say, well you lived all these months without it.
And why didn't you come into court asking for it to file something?
Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes people feel guilty, and so they're like, no, that's okay. You just take everything. And it's
guilt.
It's very hard to recover from that.
Right.
Yes. By the way, guilt is don't feel guilty or use guilt, the guilt of the other party, because that guilt is one of my favorite tools as a family lawyer in terms of being able to use it to your benefit. The other thing is I would recommend anybody who is thinking about separation, if you are going to move out of the house, you do not leave your house without your children. Because there can be an argument that's made that you have abandoned your children. And so either you have a custody order, and you don't have to have a court order necessarily. You can have an agreement between you and the
just written out
something, but something that is an agreement that you are not abandoning. Because if you're like, listen, I'm leaving, and you leave for the weekend, and all of a sudden there's an argument that you've abandoned.
I didn't know that when I filed for my separation that an automatic restraining order went into place, because I thought restraining order means against physical harm, but it actually locked up all of our funds.
That's called ATROs. There's immediately they're temporary restraining orders that are automatically upon the filing of divorce, that makes it so that you cannot drain any bank accounts, you can't change any life insurance policies, you can't change any wills. Those automatically go in effect. However, what I would recommend to any party, if you think you're going to be the one filing, you are entitled to 50% of whatever's in a bank account prior to filing for divorce. Like the day before, I would go into the account, pull out 50% of everything, and take whatever liquid is there. And even your secret accounts, by the way, people, they're entitled to the other 50%. And get whatever you need so that you have that, and then file, because then you can do that.
Wow.
I remember one of the best pieces of advice I received when I was going through my divorce is that I had to think of it like a business dissolution. And that was really hard because, Jackie, you touch on about guilt and emotions. That really gets in the way. And I remember, hiking up hours with my attorney because I was so emotionally charged about things and I felt so wronged by what was happening. And then at some point I'm like, wait, this is just a business. This is just money. This is just property. And then it became much easier for me to be making smarter decisions. But when I let my emotions drive my litigation, it hurt me because I was the one that had the guilt, because I was the one that asked for it. So in the beginning, I'm like, just everything. I just wanted to make it work. And whatever we want to just get it done and just be nice to each other. And then I'm like, wait, I'm being totally taken advantage of. And it wasn't about getting more. It was just about making it equal and fair and as copacetic as we could. But then emotions took over on both parts, and it just got really cloudy for a long time.
There's also a lot of phases to the process. That's the other thing. And what people don't realize is what they feel on the day that they're thinking. I mean, first of all, there's all those divorce curious people out there who are listening, hopefully, or not, who are kind of like, I want to know what I need to do. I know that this isn't working. That was me. First of all, I separated from my husband in 2006. We got back together. And when we got back together, and by the time 2009 hit, I knew that it wasn't going to work. But I also knew that I wasn't ready in 2009 to get divorced. It took me till 2012 to finally separate. And so I think that there's a lot of mental preparation that needs to happen. I think, one of the things that I think that we don't take enough time to think about is a lot of people kind of say, oh, divorce is the easy way out. Baloney. Yeah. It is so hard. It is so emotional. I kind of look at divorce as like getting tattoos. It's like, $25 and a beer to put on and thousands of dollars and a lot of emotional pain to take it off. That's what a divorce is.
Right.
A marriage is like it's a nice little party, a few $1,000 and boom, you're married, happy, whatever. And it's lifetime of ripping out your heart and guts and being broken down and it's awful.
Yeah. And people really change during that process. People.
Well, you kind of see their true colors too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what do they say? It's like hot water. So either I don't know.
Don't ruin this. Don't ruin
Yeah,
the quote.
let's move on.
Okay.
So let's go back to the 5 mistakes that
Okay.
people are making, because I want to make sure, because we've promised them on our website. So let's.
Well, those were a couple were mushed in there.
Yeah, well, you did one. You talked about that your clients, think that you should just get them off. So one of the things that you said was that most litigants think that it's the lawyer's job to do all the work, that litigants need to look at the relationship as a partnership.
Well, right. So when I say that is that, and in particular, actually, in divorce cases, in criminal cases, any kind of case, the client, the litigant, the person whose case it is, has more information about the case than the lawyer is going to have. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes people believe and they look at this in terms of the value for their dollar. So they figure, okay, I'm giving this a lot of money to a lawyer. They should just do everything.
Right.
But the problem is that the lawyer, no matter how great they are, has not lived your life, has not lived your situation, was not there when the incident happened, didn't own your car if it was an accident, wasn't there on the day of the accident, all those kinds of things. So you need to expect to be part of doing the legwork.
Right.
I mean, if you're going through a divorce, you are the only person who knows where all the accounts are. You are the only person who knows how much money you spent. You are the only person who knows what sex was like in that marriage. You're the only person who knows those things. And so the litigants need to be prepared to participate, to give information, to have to write statements, to have to write facts. I mean, I know that there are clients out there who would think, well, why do I have to do all the writing if I'm paying you to be the writer? No, you need to make sure that I, as your lawyer, have everything that's in your head. It needs to be transmuted into my head so that I can know what you felt, saw, and are going through.
Okay. So, be a partner. The first one was not just jump into it, right?
Right. The most expensive move someone will make is hiring a free lawyer.
Oh, yes. I
Yes.
read that.
Yes,
Elaborate on that.
I love this one. This is my favorite piece of advice. Everyone, I can't tell you how many times I get hit up. I get hit up all the time for people come at me like
I just did in the hallway.
Yeah, you just did that too. Yeah, that's cool. And I don't mind giving an answer, but this is the thing. The reality is if you are asking the advice of a good lawyer, mm-hmm. then they are busy. And the only thing lawyers have is their time to sell. Mm-hmm. And no matter how you cut the cake, there are only 24 hours in a day.
Right.
So if you are going to help the person who is paying you or help the person who is not paying you, who are you going to put your brain power into? Who are you going to give the best advice to? So if you're not then giving your best advice and you're not doing the best research, then you potentially are costing that person money because
Right.
you're missing things.
Right.
And so I've used this example. I know someone who charges he's like $1,200 an hour for wills and trust stuff. He's very, very expensive.
Wow.
And I was talking to him and he said, what I tell people, and it's true, is that I'm $1,200 an hour, but I know someone can call me on the phone and in 2 seconds I can answer that question on a very complicated thing. Other lawyers who wouldn't have the depth of knowledge he does may charge $400 an hour, but it's going to take them 5 hours to do
Right.
the amount of research
Right.
that it's going to take me 2 minutes.
Right.
So my 1 minute, I'm not going to charge them. So there's this perception of let me hire the cheapest lawyer. No, sometimes hiring the most expensive lawyer is going to get you the best and cheapest result. So people
Because
don't
it's done in a
understand
quicker
how the
time frame.
finances and how
Right,
time
right.
works, and also people who aren't busy enough that they need to churn out hours.
Yeah, and I'm sure that people are constantly, going to
You
you for free
and you
advice.
get and you get what you pay for a lot of the times. Not every time, but a lot of the time.
We have to go to break, but can you stick around for one more segment?
I can.
Excellent. You're listening to Broadscast with Robin Sachs. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Broadscast with Kim and Jackie.
I stayed.
Robin Sachs. She's here. She's here. She's here.
And Robin stayed too. Thank you.
So, we all know that, libel, slander, stalking, things like that are, bad and people are held accountable in real life. But now we've moved into the internet where people say and do, it seems, whatever they want. Are we starting to get the law to back up that you can't do that anymore?
Well, first of all, just like everything when it comes to technology, the real world trails behind. So while technology and innovation happens, there's always, whatever laws that are on the books may not address the newest, latest technology. However, there have been great strides that have been made in terms of the evolution of law in terms of the internet and technology and so forth. But the one thing that people don't realize is even if there isn't the evolution of the law, the things that apply in the real world apply on the online world too. I mean, if you say something false about someone, that's defamation. And
unless you're a
slander,
public figure, right?
Well, no, that's a defense. There's
Okay.
defenses to those types of things. But if you say something, and there's certainly defenses of whether it's an opinion. I mean, there's certain things.
Right.
But that same standard is going to apply and can be used on the online world. The one thing that people kind of, I think, have this knee-jerk reaction is everything about online makes everything worse. But from a legal point of view, everything about online can make things better as a lawyer, because all of a sudden now you have this digital footprint of proof out
right.
there that you never had before.
Right.
I mean, all I need to do, the first thing I do, I mean, a client calls me, I'm like, start screenshotting. I'm the first
Right.
thing get on her Facebook account, get on her Instagram account. What is she tweeting about? Who are her friends? Before that stuff goes down, because I'll
Right.
tell you, that's the next piece of advice. That
Right.
stuff goes down.
Right.
So, you have an opportunity to know more about people than you ever have, and both the good and bad that comes with that.
So one of the things that I am curious about that, between freedom of speech with people, I can say whatever I want until but is there a line that gets drawn? I mean, can you say whatever you want until it becomes threatening? Or do you have to cite a physical, like a threat to physically harm somebody? I'm like, because I have a lot of people that will call me and ask me, what do I do? Someone's bullying me online. Someone's, when can I call it cyber stalking? When can I call the FBI and say that these threats are legit? Like what?
Well, so there's two worlds, right? There's the civil world and the criminal world. So the first thing is that, do you have a civil case, or is this something that needs law enforcement intervention? And sometimes both systems have to work hand in hand. The standard to get a criminal protective order, meaning a restraining order, or I'm sorry, a civil restraining order, not a criminal. Civil restraining order is hard. It's not easy to get a restraining order nowadays. Just someone saying something. I mean, you have to actually show that there is a seriousness to the threat, that it wasn't said in jest, that they actually have the ability to carry out the threat. It's very hard to get a civil restraining order. If there is a criminal case, something that mounts to what would be criminal, very often it would be automatic that a criminal restraining order would come from it. But then again, that's the same standard on the criminal side, because on the criminal side, in order for it to be a crime, in order for it to be what's called terrorist threats or criminal threats under the penal code, is there has to be a threat. It has to be foreseeable that it actually can be carried out. So usually what does it take to then be able to cross over to where law enforcement will get involved is that it usually has to happen multiple times, or it has to increase. Something that starts with a post that then turns into I've showed up at your work. Well, now you're showing that now this person has gone to this next level. And the one thing I think that people make a mistake about is I get so many calls of people calling me and saying, this person's threatening me, and this person's been threatening me for a long time, and I want to get a restraining order. And I'll say, okay, so when was the last time that the person threatened you? And they'll be like 2 weeks ago. I'm like, okay, you can't call me. It's not ripe anymore. You can't say I'm scared for my life and not having done anything for 2 weeks.
Right.
And the courts will they don't look favorably on that anyway, because if you're so scared, why didn't you come in here the day that it happened?
That's
but I will
exactly
tell
right.
you, having unfortunately been in that situation, it's not that easy to get a restraining order, as you said. And so sometimes that's the reason, because I couldn't get one. I couldn't,
But you try.
Yeah.
You try, because then you can say, I tried on this date, on this date. And by the way, one of the reasons why people don't get restraining orders is why they don't get issued is because it's very hard to get service on the person that you need to get restrained. You have to you actually have to serve them. They have an opportunity to be heard in court. And you will get a restraining order by default if they've been served and haven't shown up. But if they don't know about it, or there's no proof of service, you're not going to get a restraining order. So then the amount of work it takes to go, and that's money. It costs people money to hire someone to serve someone. I mean, who wants to go find their stalker and serve them themselves? No one.
Do you feel like there's an increase in lawsuits filed with the onset of like the internet and social media? Do you feel like because people now have become armchair detectives and people have access to so much information that fires up the litigation train?
I think that there is a little bit of a reverse of what's going on in civil cases, primarily in the system right now is I think that there's like the person who runs to the courthouse first is usually the person who should be the defendant, but they become the plaintiff. I'm not kidding. Like, I find that there's like a lot of people who like use the legal system to stalk people and harass people. Like, I have a case that it's a friend of mine, actually. She's a lawyer in California, but she lives in North Carolina, and she broke up with his boyfriend, and he is now filing lawsuits against her everywhere, just to as a form of stalking. And so he's using the legal system as a form of stalking. So he's the plaintiff in all these cases and claiming all this baloney junk. I mean, it's not junk, but he's wreaking havoc on her life by being the plaintiff in a lawsuit. So I do think that whenever I see I'm much more sympathetic to the defendant in a civil lawsuit these days.
Huh.
Interesting.
I wouldn't have thought that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jackie.
I was just, there have been a lot of cyberbullying and unfortunately suicides and, young kids. I mean, home used to be that safe place where you'd get away from all the drama and the BS that happens at school. And now it just follows you home, and before some of these tragedies happen, is there something that kids or parents of kids can do to stop other kids from kind of cyberbullying? Or, I mean, obviously, other than cancel all your accounts and not be on?
Well, the first recommendation I have is parents, you don't need a warrant. You don't need permission. You need to snoop on your kids' phones and on their devices, and you need to know what they're saying and who they're saying things to. I think that, I'm not saying that you need to do this on a daily basis, but you need to spot check and know what your kids are saying and what they're saying and what's being said to them, so that you can have meaningful conversations about that stuff. And I think you have to open up the conversations. I don't think that there's one size fits all on how to fix all of this, but I think that you need to be aware. You need to be listening. You need to know what your kids are doing, who they're talking to, that you need to monitor their website and social media and electronic use. I mean, I think that the amount of time that you allow your kids to be on devices needs to be greatly limited and controlled. I think phones should be charged in a common area so that that there's downtime on those devices, those kinds of things.
Well, taking that one step further, are there things that adults can do to advocate for ourselves so that we don't find ourselves in litigious situations? Like, we put a question out to our listeners, like, do you read contracts? Do you know what your HOA says? Do you read the bank statements and the fine print?
No.
Oh my gosh, Robin, I'm the first to tell you, I've bought several houses, cars, adopted a child. I read nothing.
I know. Well, there's actually a little bit of a defense to that because, okay, so you know how there's I've adopted. You know how there's some contracts where you have to like initial at the lines or whatever. Those are the reason that they have those little initials is to make sure that you're reading them as you go along, because there is a defense that if this is this long thing with itty bitty writing, you're not going to necessarily read everything and you may not be held accountable for everything, and that could be a defense to a contract. But yes, I mean, one of the number one things that people come to me and they'll say, can I sue blah blah blah, and I signed this contract, and I said, what does the contract say? Because the first thing you need
it's so hard to read.
You need the first thing is, I mean, when it says, and you are waiving all of your rights, and this case will be settled by mandatory arbitration, and you may not file a lawsuit. Well, now, guess what? Only way to settle that case is through arbitration, or at least you have to start that first. Unless you're trying to invalidate the contract, which is a whole other thing.
So basically, people need to read and not sign blindly.
Yeah, and you know what you can also do? I'm a big fan of crossing things out in contracts that I don't like. So if you sign a contract, like I'll just like redline it myself, and you just sign it and then initial where you did it, like that, because then it's a counter offer back, and if they let it go and that's what it is, then that's the contract.
Right.
Oh,
that
look at
sounds
that.
good.
Perfect
That's
timing.
it. End of our show.
Wow.
Robin
That was
Sachs,
fast.
thank you so much for joining us. And
thank you for having me.
You can find Robin on Twitter at Robin Sachs, robinsachs.com. The new website.
Yes, the new website.
Looks amazing.
And all of your books, we put them on our website too. You have 6 books that you've written, but we listed them on our website, and people can find them there. And thank you, Robin, always for being such a good advocate for victims and survivors and all that stuff too.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.